folks, welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. So we got a lot to talk about on the show today. How about the scam of American-made beef? Did you know that if your beef is the final stage processed in the United States, they can call it American-made, and it can be shot up with all kinds of vaccines in some other country, maybe Mexico, with no real oversight. Yet if it put in a little styrofoam container right here in America, then it's American-made. We're going to talk about that. But I also want to hit Gavin Newsom. Boy, this guy, the audacity of his ability to gaslight not just Californians, but the American people. He is now claiming that he has commissioned a review of California's COVID response to go through the bad and the good. What good did California have when it came to the COVID response? Lockdowns, masks, mandatory vaccinations, business closures, economy crushers, you name it. California had it. That was very damaging to the California economy and so many people, and really the lives of so many people in California. So we're going to talk about that and hear from Gavin Newsom. He was on the Sean Ryan podcast. We'll play some clips and then have our guest, Dr. Kelly Victory, respond to some of those. But before we do that, folks, let me tell you about the wellness company, twc.health/grant, promo code grant. This is the, it's upside down. This is the emergency medical prescription medication kit, ivermectin in here. But don't forget, since we're going to be talking about beef today, do not forget about parasites in beef. You got the screwworm situations. Well, the wellness company has Wellness Farms, and you can get to Wellness Farms, which is totally American-made beef, no vaccinations, and guaranteed to be free of the screwworm and all the other craziness. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. You can get to the prescription medication kits and, of course, Wellness Farms and the Parasite Cleanse, which is very, very important to do. Back in stock after 3 times sold out. All right, with that, let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. My guest today, Dr. Kelly Victory. She is with the Wellness Company. Dr. Victory, it's always great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so first off, let's start with Gavin Newsom. Revisionist history. I believe he's going to come out and give California an A for their response to COVID. That is my assumption. He's going to revise history to show how great everything was instead of how tyrannical and awful it was. Mm-hmm. Your response to Gavin Newsom?
Boy, he is the gift that keeps on giving, Grant. As I think you know, I spend about half my time in the state of California, and Gavin Newsom has, a remarkable ability to gaslight. He has so little self-insight. Truly, he was at the helm during the great debacle of the COVID pandemic response. The state of California performed very poorly. You can compare them to many other states, not only Florida, but places like Louisiana and Tennessee and Kentucky and Texas that did not institute all of the ridiculous mandates that they did in California. It was in California, where they had police officers chasing people down on the beach when they're running solo on the beach, trying to get surfboarders in as if you are somehow spreading COVID while out on a, boogie board in the ocean. It was absolutely ridiculous. And they destroyed the lives and livelihoods of millions and millions of people. The number of small family-run businesses that were forced to close because they couldn't afford to limit their capacity in their bar or restaurant, or they couldn't afford to put up these stupid plexiglass shields that did nothing. And 90+%, Grant, of those small businesses that shut down during COVID never reopened. And that is on Gavin Newsom.
What an economy killer, not to mention the things that they did to the people with the vaccines and all of these things. He went on the Sean Ryan program. My thoughts on Sean Ryan, I'm questionable lately of what he's doing. I don't even know why you'd give this clown Gavin Newsom a platform. But he did ask him a couple tougher questions about this. He did it in a very nice way, but he brought up Joe Rogan, who didn't have Gavin Newsom on his podcast. I'll play this clip, and then I'll get your response.
So this is from Joe Rogan.
Oh, God.
This is a tough one.
He won't have me on the show, by the way.
Who will be held accountable for mandating COVID-19 vaccines for children, which were unnecessary and ineffective? And who will take responsibility for the unprecedented increases in myocarditis and cancer cases among them? Second to that, do you feel any remorse for that draconian decision that was obviously heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical companies' desire for maximum profit?
Yeah, I've signed some of the most progressive laws against big pharma in the country, so I have receipts on that. So no one should suggest that it was about doing the bidding of big pharma. Quite the contrary. California, like many states, red states included, Florida included, moved forward early in the pandemic, working with the Trump administration and the advisors from the Trump administration to impose certain strategies to mitigate the impacts of this novel disease, coronavirus. What's interesting about this process is none of us have really reviewed in an objective way. It's all through the lens of politics, what we did right and what we did wrong. And
So what's amazing to me there, Dr. Victory, is that he totally shirks responsibility. And again, he does typically what Democrats do. They blame Trump and the Trump administration for this, and then switches direction to talk about this review that he's going to have now.
Right. And to suggest, Grant, that no one's been doing a thoughtful review of this other than politically is preposterous. I've been doing it from the very, very beginning, and you have as well. We've looked at it through the scientific lens and exposed from the beginning that everything was political. They did not follow the science at all. And we kept screaming it from every, platform that we could and saying, stop. There's absolutely zero rationale for giving anyone these shots, let alone children. We knew at the very beginning that children were at a de minimis risk from COVID. There was never justification to close schools or apply masks or any of that. But Gavin Newsom, as I said, has absolutely no ability to look inwards or to look in the mirror. It would have been one thing if he started and said, look, we've got to acknowledge it. We made horrible mistakes. We did a terrible job in retrospect, but he can't. He has zero humility. And he goes on later in that interview, by the way, to suggest, to chastise others and say that people, quote, need to be humble, need to have humility. I mean, pot, meat, kettle. That guy has never met humility. No. And he will never acknowledge what an abject failure he was and what he did to the state of California in the process.
All right, let's play a little bit more from him.
Well, I answer that question by telling you what I've just tasked. I've asked our team to put together an objective review of everything we did right, everything we did wrong. We're interviewing people that vehemently disagree with us, that oppose the mask mandates, that oppose the stay-at-home orders, people that are international experts. We're stress testing our entire process. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Comparing and contrasting to what other states did. I mean, Florida shut down their bars and restaurants before California. Before California.
All right. I'm just going to ask this question. There's a little bit more I'll play, but Dr. Victory, he talks about we interviewed people who vehemently disagree with us. I interviewed Dr. McCullough last week. He didn't mention Gavin Newsom calling him. He would have most certainly told me, I just spoke to. Has he called you, Dr. Victory, or Dr. Thorpe?
No,
company doctors?
No, hasn't spoken to any of us. And we are on the record from the very beginning of the pandemic. I certainly was in early 2020 calling it out and have been proven right on all of it. They now have acknowledged, for example, that masks don't work, something I said from day one. They've acknowledged that social distancing, the 6-foot rule, totally made up, not based on a shred of science. We know that the vaccines not only are dangerous and have resulted in untold deaths and harms, but they don't stop you from getting COVID, and they don't stop you from transmitting it to others. Yet Gavin Newsom has not reached out to me, to Peter McCullough, to Harvey Reich, to Dr. Thorpe, to none of us. So I'll be very interested in reading his, thoughtful review of what they did in the state of California. I'd be happy to give him the review. The list of things they did right is going to be very, very short if they're honest.
And trying to be honest about it, I can't think of anything that they did right, but I have a hard time thinking about anything anybody did actually right. So let me play some more of this as well, because it's just it's rich, to say the least.
The question was, when did we start to unwind some of those restrictions? California was more restrictive, and we were certainly aggressive at scale. As it relates to vaccines save lives. But Joe asked a very different question about children, and I respect that. And that was where there was a lot of feedback with a lot of experts that I had as advisors. By the way, I used advisors from 2 other states. We did this West Coast Alliance to review not just what was coming from the federal government, but to have a prism and lens on the recommendations coming from the CDC through our own independent advisors. And I took their advice, not as a doctor, but as a governor. So with humility, seriously, humility and grace, I've asked them to have that report done. It's going to be done next month. And it'll be the only state that I know of that is putting out a truly objective review of what went right and what went wrong. And I know everyone's a goddamn genius now in hindsight. But at the time, none of us knew what we were up against, including the President of the United States, who I worked very closely with. There wasn't a Democratic governor in America that worked closer during the pandemic than I did
with Trump. So I will say this. President Trump was getting bad advice from all Democrats around him that were in charge of this, Dr. Fauci being the chief one among them. So he trusted the wrong people, President Trump. I think he would acknowledge that going on now. But he said something very interesting. He said the vaccines save lives. You still have Democrats saying this. Dr. Victory, I don't see it. And I'm trying to look at it through an objective lens. I don't see where the vaccine saved any lives, in fact.
No, it's hard for me to listen to Gavin Newsom because there's so much hand movement, and I feel like he's trying to act it out with his hands. It makes me crazy. Yeah. But you are 100% correct, Grant. You can make the statement, and people do. Gavin Newsom has over and over. The vaccine saved lives. The vaccine saved millions. No, they didn't. There isn't a shred of proof of that. There isn't a single study that shows that the vaccines even decreased the risk of hospitalization, let alone death. So I would say to Gavin, great, show me that study, because I can show you the data on the harms they caused. I can show you the data that proves that they did not stop people from contracting COVID. We have study after study, huge studies, 50,000 and more patients in the study that shows that the more vaccinated you are for COVID, the more likely you are to contract that virus. And that exists up until today. So Gavin Newsom is just plain wrong. He will never end up coming to the truth because he won't look for it. You won't, find what you refuse to look for. And unfortunately, this is somebody who's going to double down on believing that he did the right thing. He's going to pat himself on the back. I was in California, as I said. They were the last to lift the draconian restrictions. They were the last, and they, begrudgingly finally let us get back to some semblance of living a normal life in the state of California. He was an absolute failure.
All right, here's a little example of him back then.
This whole thing started in the state of California, the first community spread in a nail salon. I just want to remind everybody of that. I'm very worried about that. But right now, all of our health indicators and the health directives that I receive from health directors across state put some red flags in that space.
And
the nail salon.
Remember,
have we ever found a nail salon where this thing started?
No, and remember, at the same time as he was forcing Californians to stay home, children to stay home from school, you telling people you should rat out your neighbor if you see, too many cars parked outside their house for their, 4th of July barbecue. At the same time as he was socializing, celebrating at the French Laundry up in Napa, at a very, very expensive restaurant with his friends and family in close quarters, way beyond the numbers he was letting the rest of us. Clearly, if he was truly worried, if he thought that there was any risk to himself or his family, he would never have been caught in that situation. He out and out lied.
It's a great point. All right, I'm going to play, before we get to the scam of American beef, I want to play this last clip because this may be the most outrageous revisionist history, as if he now has some kind of understanding about the vaccine that clearly he didn't have before. But brace yourselves for this one, Dr. Victory.
Now, do you really think that the vaccine prevented people from getting COVID?
I think it prevented the acuity of the symptoms and disease and kept people out of the emergency rooms. And I think that's universally accepted, at least by 90% of objective experts.
All right, real quick, just respond to that. Is that universally accepted?
Absolutely not. What is universally accepted is that the vaccines were a failure. The vaccines failed. As I said, they have been fraught with severe side effects and complications.
Right.
They did not keep people from getting COVID. They did not keep people from transmitting COVID to others. It was an absolute failure. It has negative efficacy. As I said, huge Cleveland Clinic study. The more injected you are with that vaccine, the more likely you are to get COVID, which is why, and we all know them in our lives. You know people undoubtedly who have received not only the first 2 shots, but multiple vaccine boosters, and they get sick every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
They're
My
constantly
parents,
sick.
One of them, they're constantly getting COVID.
Yeah.
And they're boosted about 62 times. My parents, God bless them, are New York liberals. I don't even think they act like liberals except for their politics. If this makes sense, they vote for Democrats, but they don't really act like Democrats, which it's just the indoctrination of that way of thinking up north.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably another show. All right, here's where it gets real good, okay?
Man, I don't know. I just, when I wound up getting the vaccine. It's one of the only fucking things I regret. and I did it.
Which one was it? Did you go old school Johnson & Johnson?
Pfizer.
So you did the mRNA. Yeah, you did the novel, a different version.
And I was scared to death I was going to miss the birth of my son. So,
yeah.
First off, you see him look away. Oh, you do the old school Johnson & Johnson where you've been real safe, or you do the novel version, the new one. That's what they were pushing everybody. In fact, I think they ended up pulling the Johnson & Johnson one, didn't they?
Yes, they pulled the Johnson & Johnson one after it had been associated with a handful of very severe issues with blood clotting in the brain. But Gavin Newsom, said the quiet part out loud. Oh, you did the brand new one, the mRNA. And he kind of rolls his eyes like, whoo, yeah, correct. Everybody who took that shot, these shots, was a subject in an ongoing experiment. Whether you want to believe it or not, you were the unwitting participant in a medical experiment without having informed consent. Those shots were only available under emergency use authorization and by definition were experimental. They had not gone through any of the rigorous testing that they should have, and Gavin Newsom knows darn well that that's the case.
I think, Dr. Victory, so I have every Friday on the Real America's Voice show, I have a former military interrogator who does body language assessment. And so I've been doing this for years, going all the way back to my Newsmax days with this same guy. I don't think Gavin Newsom took the mRNA shot. The way
I guarantee. Yeah,
the way he
I
looked
bet
away
you
and giggles, I don't think he did.
No, I bet you he didn't take one at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he took no vaccine. And I think that that's the case with many, many people in Washington. I can tell you, do I think that Anthony Fauci took an mRNA shot? Absolutely not. Do you think Deborah Birx and Rochelle Walensky and Rick Bright and all those people took mRNA shots? Do you think, Mark Zuckerberg did? Absolutely not. He's caught on tape saying to his employees, you might want to take that. That's, experimental. We don't really know the results. All the people, the elites, they carved themselves out of this.
It's amazing because early on, I never got vaccinated. I didn't trust anything. I just thought common sense tells me something that hasn't been around. Let's let somebody else be the guinea pig, not me. And I mandated my son didn't get vaccinated too. And it's one of the best decisions I think that I've ever made.
Correct.
But early on, people were asking me, well, what do you recommend? I said, well, if you had to get vaccinated, and I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I said, the Johnson & Johnson seems better to me than the other one because it has to do with, I don't know whether it's the live virus or a form of the virus or something.
Right.
And then you say a handful of blood clots, they pull the Johnson & Johnson. They don't pull the Pfizer for a handful of myocarditis cases. They let them continue to rack up, which then tells me maybe they pulled the Johnson & Johnson because they didn't want the old school virus. They wanted only the mRNA.
I think you're fundamentally spot on. The mRNA they wanted desperately to make mRNA a household word. There's so much money in this. They have designs on making that platform available for many, many other things. So yes, I think they pulled the J&J shot to get it out of the way so that your only options were fundamentally going to be Pfizer or Moderna, one of the mRNA shots. I'm not saying that those blood clots weren't serious, but as you rightly point out, there have been by an order of magnitude more adverse events with the other shots, and they remain on the market as of this morning.
All right. Stick with me because I want to talk about beef in America today. I know the wellness company has this Wellness Farms, which just sounds absolutely amazing. So I want to talk about that. But before I do, one of the reasons why you may want to consider getting beef from Wellness Farms is this rise in parasites, specifically in beef. There's the screw worm. And I would tell you folks, like I always do, this right now is my number one product coming from the wellness company. This is this ivermectin and mebendazole product that is sold out 3 times at the wellness company. It's a parasite cleanse. 60 million Americans, by some estimates, could have parasites. If you have pets, the most likelihood is that you have parasites responsible for skin issues, digestive problems, brain fog, you name it. You want to clear up some of these things? Talk to one of the wellness company doctors, and it's super easy. You just go to twc.health/grant to talk to them about, let me get the website up, to talk to them about the parasite cleanse, twc.health/grant. And you fill out a little intake form. No big deal, no problem. And the worst part is when you think about a parasite cleanse is these worms crawling around in your fish like that. That's a shot at a grocery store, okay? So again, this is real important. I urge you, check out the wellness company. And then, of course, they've got the antibiotic, antiparasitic, antiviral kits, ivermectin in this kit as well. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. All right, so now we get to this issue of beef. And it says American-made beef, but that isn't always the exact truth. Maybe only the last stage of the beef happens in America. Not the case with the wellness company and Wellness Farms. All the beef is processed, grown, butchered right here in the United States. But tell me this little scheme they've got going, Dr. Victory.
This is really, really fascinating. And even people like myself who thought that they were well informed about our food system, surprised. It turns out, Grant, that beef and pork are the only 2 products in the United States that do not have to disclose their country of origin. If you go to the grocery store and you pick up, an avocado, it has a sticker on it that says, product of Mexico, or you get a kumquat and it says, it's from Chile, whatever. Not so with beef and pork. And not only do they not have to say the country of origin, it can be marketed as, quote, American made or U.S. made as long as the very last thing that happens is done in the United States. In other words, that animal might be born, raised, fed, slaughtered, all of it, in another country. And then as long as it gets to the United States, when it gets put in the white styrofoam thing and covered with plastic, they can put an American flag on it and say, American beef. It's a scam. And the reason I think it's so important is because more of us are paying attention to what we are eating, recognizing finally that what we put into our bodies has a huge impact on our overall health and wellness, everything from heart disease to cancer. And it's really a shame to be trying to do the right thing, but end up unwittingly eating or ingesting or feeding to your children something that is fraught with antibiotics, hormones, vaccines, all kinds of things, because those are not regulated at all. So whether you're eating chicken or beef, you need to know, you deserve to know, had that animal been treated with antibiotics for the duration of its life? Has it received multiple vaccines? Most cattle in this country and elsewhere receive dozens of vaccines for everything from bovine respiratory syncytial virus to, different bacterial infections. They are kept in close quarters in most farming conditions, most cattle production. So in order to try to keep those animals from getting sick, they over-vaccinate them. They treat them with hormones to increase their body weights. They treat them with antibiotics. There's antibiotics in the feed. So when you then ingest that meat, you are getting all of those things. And it's why I'm obviously very, very fond of and pro on those different kits you are showing from the wellness company that have a broad range of prescription medications, antibiotics, antivirals, those sorts of things. But this new initiative we have of Wellness Farms is super exciting. These are animals, these are cattle that are born, raised, grass-fed, grass-finished, slaughtered, and all in the United States, never receive an antibiotic, no hormones, zero vaccines, not just mRNA vaccines, but no vaccines. And that entire process ends up with a final product, a steak or a hamburger or whatever, that not only tastes better, but it is better for you. It turns out, for example, just raising that cattle on grass-fed and finished rather than grain, tips the scale on the fatty acids so that the omega-3 levels in our beef are far higher than in grain-fed beef. So when you're spending all of this time, money, and effort trying to feed your family, make sure that you're focusing on things that are going to improve their health and wellness, it certainly is nice to know now that there's a place you can go to buy beef that is 100% truly made in America.
All right, and that is absolutely great news. And I take it all different cuts of beef. You could get filet mignon, New York strip, ribeyes, all these types of things.
Yes, and we've got right now, we have 3 different packages. You can buy the personal package, which is somewhere in the range of 10 pounds of meat, great for a single person or for a couple. And it all comes frozen, so you can just plunk it right in your freezer. So the single person box, there's then a box that includes closer to 20 to 30 pounds of meat, great for a family, has more cuts, different roasts, different types of cuts, and all this, a variety of steaks as well as ground beef. And then you can also buy an eighth of a cow, which I believe is in the range of about 50 pounds. Again, more different cuts of meat, including some ground beef, lots of steaks, lots of roasts. But all of it you can be guaranteed, as I said, 100% raised in the United States, grass-fed, grass-finished, and free from all of the toxic stuff that you wouldn't want to be ingesting.
Well, that is so important. And this is the kind of work that the wellness company is doing to keep American citizens healthy and also informed at the same time, which is why I love my association with you and the wellness company, Dr. Victory. And it's always great having you on the program. I'm going to tell people again how they get to Wellness Farms, but a big thank you, Dr. Victory, as always.
Thanks for having me, Grant. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And folks, here's the address. It's real easy. Just go to twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. There's the parasite cleanse, as I mentioned, sold out 3 times, back in stock. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's great. I've started my course as well. You've got the prescription medication kits, a bunch of different sizes of these as well, important to have for your family. And then there's Wellness Farms, which I can't wait to try this meat. I have not tried it yet, but I will, and report back to you. And so I am going to order some of the meat from Wellness Farms, and I urge you to, because everything that comes out of the wellness company has been tried and true. And really, I've tried most of the things that I tell you about. I've tried. And so pay them a visit, twc.health/grant. And remember the whole idea of a parallel economy. I love supporting companies that believe in the things and the values that we believe in. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT. That's going to do it for us. Stinchfield's Army Rolls. We'll see you tonight on the Real America's Voice show. Thanks for watching, everybody.